people that are saying that game developers, and even more so, voice actors have royalties, have no understanding of the world's economy, because economy is all about risk, right? And if you do a normal wage job, you take no risk, so you can't get any royalties. This is just how it works in reality. 300-400 cents, right, that has to be paid. Doesn't make any sense. It's insane to believe this thing. No risk, no royalty. So, hello everyone, Drew here. Today I want to talk about why voice actors, and even game developers, especially voice actors though, shouldn't get royalty pay, right, or residual pay or whatever, right? So if you followed, of course, the Hellena Taylor, I made videos about that, right? And I called out immediately that she was lying. I said it immediately, right? The first day I was like, in what context, $4,000, is she lying? Why is she attacking the developer for? Was she attacking the... Get my point, right? But an aftermath of this Hellena Taylor is that a lot of people are claiming and they want to get better pay, right, for developers and VA. And I have been very, very, of course, strongly advocating, right, for better pay. Because that would mean I would get better pay. Of course I want game developers to have better pay, because it's a very, 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 very underpaid job, right, from an hourly wage standpoint. If I go work in a bank, I can easily make twice the amount of money, right? Or even higher, like 3 times or 4 times even at a fintech company and so on, right? Even if I code for a game company. Basically the code is the same, but yeah, basically the code work is the same. But because you want code for a game company, you get like $10 an hour, then you get $30 an hour at a fintech company. That's like literally how it is, right? In a lot of cases, especially in Japan, with even lower salaries. So it's however, I'm showing you my tips ranks page here, right? Because I love stocks, right? I love freaking trading and so on, right? Here's my CBS trading and so on, right? And the reason I show this thing is because if you don't take any risk, though, you can't get any royalty pays. It doesn't make any sense. So why I am strongly, for that game developers and even VA, some VAs perhaps, right, to have higher pay per hour, I am incredibly against them getting percentage cut, right? If it's royalty, if it's residual pay or whatever, all this stuff doesn't make any sense. And I've been thinking about this for a few days now. But I have a great example here, right? Because you see here, this is one of my stock trading lists, right? I use like 10 different sites, right? Because I have different stocks, different percentages, right? When I trade and so on, because I day trade, right? I've done it for 10 years, so I day trade a lot, so I make most of my money, right? So yesterday, you can see here, right? There's some stocks that are down a lot, like UT7. Yesterday, I bought a stock because it was at its bottom. At a conference, I went to the conference and I put a bid for a stock. It's gonna fall a lot, so it fell like 7%. And I bought the stock, okay, because I had a market order price, right, at the conference, so to speak, even from home. And when I got home, I bought it, right. And today it fell another 10%. So I am down $1,000 in one day, which of course, you turn off the video now. This guy is a loser. My point, of course, is that I believed that this stock was gonna go up today, right? Because I was like, I can flip this stock because it's been falling for the whole year, and I think it has to go up eventually. It might sound stupid, but obviously I'm very, very simple, very short summary, right? My goal was to put 10k in it, right? And then I hope I can sell it for maybe 11k today, right? But now it's worth 9k instead. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying, this is true, right? And why am I saying it? I won't say what stock it is, right? Because I don't want to give you bad or good advice here, right? It's for entertainment purposes, right? It's only for entertainment purposes. But get my point. My point is that if you're gonna make money, right, by investment, you have to take a risk. This is what it's always to be about, okay? You need to take a risk with your money. There are 2 ways in reality, right? More or less how to make money. One is by working, right? You work, you go to your work, right? You get paid an hourly wage. Maybe you get paid for commission or whatever. Maybe you get paid like a set sum of money, right? But you get paid for your work, right? For your labor. So if you are, let's say, a plumber, you go to someone's house to help them with the plumbing, and then you leave, right? You get paid for that per hour. You know what I mean? Very, very simple, right? The other way to make money is stocks, right? Or rather investment, right? So for example, you can have stocks, you can go and buy skills. Don't buy skills. You can buy MP, pretty good. You can buy, let's say, maybe the shiny stocks over there. Let's go down a bit. Maybe you can buy some Google, that can go up. This is on YouTube, so you might want to buy some Google. I can say, for complete, this open transparency, Google is my biggest hold, right? I have the most money in Google, right? So I can say that easily. But I think a lot of people have the most money in Google, so it's like it's pretty fun, okay? I believe in that, right? Maybe you can buy some, let's say some good company, Blizzard. Yeah, I used to work there, right? The Blizzard game company. Right? So you can buy stocks, right? You can also invest into maybe buying a restaurant. You can buy a house and rent out, right? Or you can sell houses. For example, my aunt, she owns a few houses. My father, he owns a couple of apartments and a house, right? So he lives in, my father is in Norway, and then he has a apartment in Sweden, and then he has several apartments in other countries, right? In, vacation countries, right? Around in Europe, in Asia, so on. And then he rents them out, right? So he's basically real estate, right? Real estate investment. That he likes it. My father hates stock market. Okay? My father hates shit. He hates stock. He doesn't believe in the numbers, but he believes in physical stuff. So he's rather invest into houses, right? But anyway, point is that you can make again money only in two ways, right? By working or investing it, right? So you invest into either the stock market or in the housing market, or perhaps into, for example, a restaurant, right? If my brother calls me and say, I want to open a restaurant, bro, right? He say, if you give me $10,000, you can be a partner and this stuff and get the revenue and investment, right? That's the only two ways you can make money, really, right? And everything else, right? If you work in, whatever, porn industry, whatever, it still is a work, you know what I mean? So the thing is that to get royalties, right? To get royalties or to get residual pay, you have to take a risk. I said, right? I lost 10% on a stock in one day, right? And I was thinking of making this video. So like I said, I lost 10% in a stock in one day. And this is a true story. And I was thinking of making this video even before this thing, but then I woke up today, right? And after work today and so on, because I woke up today, that stock I bought yesterday was basically where I bought it, right? Because my bid was basically where it ended yesterday. So I was like, okay, plus minus zero, or whatever, right? And then I come home from work today, and I'm down $1,000, right? And this is a true story, yeah, because I lose a lot of money. So I'm terrible. No, I usually win, but my ratio is about 80%, right? When I flip stocks over the years, my math is roughly 80% correct, right? But that's what I mean. You need, and I say this thing because you need to take a chance, right? You need to take risks. If you're gonna make money in the stock market, yes, I am angry when I see that shit, I lost $1,000, but I haven't sold it, but I'm down 1,000 immediately. Come on, we were already at 52 low, right? Because I get pissed off, right? I get emotional, I have emotions, right? But generally speaking, I'm still like, well, you lose some, you win some, right? And I still think that its company's earning rates, its ER, is in like 2 weeks from now, roughly speaking. And I'll say it's coming soon, like next week or 2 weeks from now. So I'm still gonna hold it, right? Because I believe that it's gonna have a better ER. People think it's gonna probably bounce a bit there, right? But again, that's not a risk, right? What if the ER sucks? If the ER, the earning, if that's terrible then next week, I probably will lose another $2,000-3,000, right? And I know this might sound crazy or whatever, but again, this is how the stock market works. You take a risk, right? Like my father about him, he's a real estate guy, right? But what if that country he buys a house in, or that country has issues, right? So it goes down in value or up. It's a risk, right? You know what I mean? And he has obviously people renting from him, right? And sometimes, he gets a new person renting from him, and that person is a terrible, terrible person, doesn't pay in time, whatever. So it's a risk there too. You're gonna sue them and so on. So again, you need to take a risk, and this is what people don't understand. People that are saying that game developers, and even more so, voice apps have royalties, have no understanding of the world's economy, because economy is all about risk, right? And if you do a normal wage job, you take no risk, so you can't get any royalties. This is just how it works in reality. Because if I go to office, right, say I work at Google, right, I go to Google and I work and they pay me a good salary. There's no inherent risk for me, right? I have a very minor risk of getting fired or whatever, right? But there's no actual risk. I'm gonna get my salary and that's it, right? If I want royalty, you need to take a risk. It's like buying stock. You need to say that, for example, if I'm gonna go say, don't pay me any money. I just want stocks instead, right? I don't want any money. I just want pure stock pay, right? If I said that, right, at Google, They would say no, because they're like, I can just give you money instead. But if that was a deal, right, I get with Google, then I take a massive risk, right? Because all the money they're paying me is in, an open market traded Google stock, right? So it's obviously going to be up and down, right? So the risk is massive, right? Compared to just getting a salary, but I can also then make a lot more money because I get a lot more stock, right? That being said, of course, if you work at Google, Microsoft and so on, right, they will usually have, of course, a stock, kind of a bonus, right? Maybe you get a few stock per year, depending on your role and so on, right? Of course. So they have a little bit of that system, right? But generally speaking, you get my point. Like, if I want a lot of stock, right, I need to get in there early, right? So if you ever seen how a lot of people are very rich having worked at Facebook, Google, right? It's because they got in early. And if you get in early at the company, I'm not talking founder, I'm talking like, this is the 11th coder guy, right? This is the 25 guy that they hired to do this thing, right? I'm talking about the first, people they hired, right? When you get hired at a startup company, they don't have any money. So instead of, having to pay you money, right? Like actual cash, here's $1,000, right? They are like, we can only pay you like, maybe like $50. So okay, then you get stocks, right? Because stocks will get that royalty and so on. That's not the point. But, so for example, I read a lot of people being confused that there were VAs that have made more money than Hellena doing indie voice acting. But that is completely market reasonable. Like, for me, that's like how, I'm that guy, but you shouldn't be confused that voice actors make more money, potentially, right? Potentially more money doing indie games, right? Because, of course, an indie company, it's not a company usually, they can't pay you a wage, right? Exactly. So not only do the VA make more money, but also the coder and the designer, so right? Because if they hire me then to, they need someone to rate let's say the AI, okay, for a new game company, right? And I might be like, well, I'm pretty expensive, so I want that Hellena Taylor, I want $1,000 an hour, and I can say like, you have to give me $1,000 an hour. You get my point? They're gonna say you're an effing crazy guy, and they probably won't do it. But they will obviously say we can't pay your normal wage, right? So you will instead get stock option, right? Or you will get residual pay, or of course royalty, right? Something like that, right? So they're gonna work out that instead because they can't pay my normal wage. Because currently I have my own company and also work for a consulting company, right? To send me out. So I'm quite expensive, per hour, right? A gig economy, similar to this thing, right? And obviously, right? If I have to take a gig then, at, like I said again, a startup company, there is no way like a new company can pay my wage, right? Because I cost like a few $100s per hour at least, right? So they can't pay that, right? So they would have to give me a percentage, right? And that makes perfect sense. But if you go to a big company, they instead are gonna be like, no, we can just pay you the wage. We're not gonna give you percentage because we know we're gonna sell at least 500,000 copies, right? You know what I mean? Or we go bankrupt, so we can't give you that. So it's all about risk, right? Because the thing that people understand, I suppose, though, is that if you go then, right, and it's a VA at, again, a new indie company, right, a new video game company, there is the money, and you get a cut, right? The thing is that you can also make zero money, right? You hear all the time about people getting rich in Silicon Valley, right? But of course, a lot of people have made companies in Silicon Valley, or they have started working very early, right, at a company in Silicon Valley, and then that company just went bankrupt or failed, then they get no money. They might, usually, what you have, right, is a low salary plus, basically, some cut percentage, right? So, what they've had, let's say they work for 3 years at a new company in Silicon Valley, and they might actually have, like, half their salary, right, half normal salary, but they got, let's say, 5% of the company, right? So they got like a high percent of the company, but because the company is bankrupt, right, that 5% is worth nothing. So they actually lost money, but they, in those 3 years, they actually only made half, right, if they kept the former job, right. However, of course, if the company succeeds, suddenly that 5% is worth, $10 million, then they're rich, right, you know what I mean? That's how risk return works, right? And again then, if you go and work as a game developer, or even worse, a VA, and I really mean it, is a VA, you take no risk, right? You take no investment or risk, right? And the thing with VA is that you take incredibly low risk. So it's not only is the VA, what I mean, like, they don't do much, right? Percentage-wise, again, we talked about it several times. They work very, very little, right? On the actual, hours of the game, right? But think about that. Because you work so little on the actual game, your risk is incredibly low, right? Hellena Taylor worked 1 week, right, on Bayonetta 1 and 2, then 1 week more. Think about that risk factor. It's incredibly low. She doesn't even work a full month. It means she has 3 more weeks that same month to do another job, right? And I understand people say, oh, but the gig economy is so unfair and so on. But from a typical capitalistic risk management standpoint, that means you have 3 more weeks, right, to get a gig, to stay, so stock trade, right? You have 3 more weeks to work at a grocery store or whatever. And then, of course, you can do other stuff. You can have a normal job, right? And do both as a gig side, right? Because if you have a normal job, paying you, let's say, $10 an hour, right? You do it every day, right? You know, every normal work day. And then every now and then, you get a voice gig, right? But the voice gig pays you so incredibly well those few days, you can take off from your normal job, you know what I mean? Like my father has the kind of job where he has, you know, a full-time job, right? Then he got another thing that he does once a week, kind of side thing, right? And if that happens, he can then leave his normal job. He owns his own company, right? He can leave the company and say, I have to take off now, and you know, all people can manage it if he's not there, right? Because he makes so much extra money, right, doing that extra consulting stuff, right? That's like a great business strategy because he makes so much money again, right, from his side stuff, right? That he can basically say, oh, I'm not gonna work on my normal business this week because I can make 3 times the money, right? So even if you lose money from the normal job, you still get more money, right? And whatever, so on. So basically, again, as a voice actor, you have the risk of not getting gigs, right? You have the risk of not a safe employment, but because you work so few hours in the actual project, you have an enormous free time to do something else, like having a normal job, you know, like a normal 9 to 5 job, or having way more gigs, or whatever. You get my point. The risk is actually incredibly low because you have so much free time to do anything else. You can be an artist, you can do OnlyFans, you can be a streamer, you can do so much other stuff with that time, right? And I think especially as I had in my second video, Hellena Taylor, is that she's the opposite of this thing, right? Because she spent so much time of actually developing her career, right? She has done nothing for 8 years, and in before that, she only did, you know, better stuff, right? For Smash or whatever. She's basically been AFK for like 10 years, right? This is an example of a person that is spending no time whatsoever, right, to minimize her risk by getting more gigs, going to convention, whatever, in the game industry, and doesn't do anything else either, for that matter. But, you know, it's still, like, she's doesn't care about the risk, right? So, no, you can't pay a voice actor, royalties for taking basically no risk whatsoever. Oh, you have to work here for 1 week, you know? It's incredibly low risk, right? Like I said, to be able to get paid royalties, or rather than stock options, right, you need to take a big risk and work at, you know, the beginning of the company when they have very little money. That being said, it's very easily explained. Of course, if you work at Google and so on, right, they give you stock options, right? But it's a different story, right? Because if you're going to be Google today and you're a highly educated person, right, blah blah blah, and so on, they will give you stock options, right, stock bonus, whatever. But that's because they can give you, like a million percentage, right? You know what I mean? They have 100 million option stocks out in the open market, right? There's so much, stocks out there that even if you get like 10 stocks a year, it's not even 1%, you know what I mean? It's so little, minuscule, right, to the actual company. So you can get rich by that. But you get a little extra bonus, right? And that's to keep you in the company, and you probably get more stock, right? But it's just a risk there too, because your salary, right, is lowered because they might say that, well, we give you 100k per year and you get 10 stocks, or you get 20k per year, but you get way more stocks, you know what I mean? So you still have like a stock kind of balance there, right? And of course, it usually works like I worked at one company, my last company for last year, they gave you more stocks for every year, right? So if you work at that company, IT company, right? The first year you got like 200 stocks. The next year you got still 200, but the third year you got 600 stocks, right? Or shares, I mean. So you got more shares, stocks, shares. So you got more shares after certain years, right? So the longer you stay there, right, the more you got more and more value on the shares, right? The shares can go up and down in value so across this time, right? But you got like, more and more. But then you take a risk, right? Because you have to stay at the company. Because every year you stay there, you get more and more stock, right? So you have to stay. But what if the company goes down in value, right? So even if you get more shares, the company value might diminish, right? So it's less and less valuable to have a system of that share. So it's a herd risk, right? And so on. So it's not a clear risk. But obviously, It's a massive difference going to a big IT company today. It's already well established, and they give you a bonus or whatever, stock options, right? Very, very common because they have so many hundreds of millions of shares, right? But it's not comparable to the royalty you actually pay of getting like 10-20% off, a game or whatever. And for that matter, of course, at Google, etc., you're not getting paid, per product, right? You're getting paid as a stock for the whole company. And so if you're gonna work in the game industry, it's the same thing there, because it's still the IT industry, so you won't get stocks, right? Sorry, you won't get royalties, you will get stocks, right? If you're gonna be invested into Bayonetta as a risk investment, you will get stock into Platinum Games, right? It is really stupid to say someone should get royalty of Bayonetta 3. No, it would much rather work as someone should get, stocks, right? Percentage of the company that makes Bayonetta 3, so you have the whole risk. And there's also one thing people are ignoring is that Bayonetta 3, or Bayonetta 1 and 2, I mean, she lied, of course, about the profit they made, right? But then you also have the loose, right? You have the Scalebound, you have the other games that they have made or not have made. You have the Baldur's Fall that obviously is a failure. So if you're investing into a company, you're investing into its success and its failures, right? So you can't just invest into one game of the company. That's very weird too. You normally have to invest in the whole company, right? Like if you open a restaurant, you invest into that restaurant chain, you're investing into all, the franchise. One place is kind of weird, right? Depending, of course, how big it is, it might have some offshore. But you get my point. It's like, no, you have to usually invest into the whole company, right? So if she's going to be employed Platinum Games, she probably will get stock options, right, for the whole company, not for one game either. I think one thing is because people are like misunderstanding how important an actor is, right? For a movie star actor compared to a voice actor, does like 1 week work, but sometimes playing the character for months, right? Like in a TV show or a movie takes like a year to produce, right? It's a huge difference, right? And so it's not really the same thing. It's not the same thing. But anyway, I'll show you a few examples. And we go to Twitter and so on, right? We see people saying that they should have 20% royalty. This is the worst I could say. It's a random person on Twitter, right? If I just Google Hellena Taylor royalty, right? And you get people saying, 20% royalty would be? That would mean that, I guess, the meaning by profit, right? So, should the voice, I mean, this is the worst, dumbest thing I've seen. This person here is described, right? David Dobrik here, yeah. David believes that she should get 20%, I guess, of the profit, I think it means, right? Royalty profits. Which would mean that she would work for 1 week and get 20% of the profits, right? So, there are a couple of reasons why I'm incredibly against, right, giving VAs royalties, because, as I talked about earlier, right, in my other videos, a VA only works for, a set period of time, a very short amount of time. So if you compare that, so already from that standpoint, right, if the voice actor gets royalties, we will have to give the developers, right, the artist, the game designer, the VFX, everyone else that, in my opinion, and I have no problem stating my opinion, right, is more important for the video game, right? Actually, as I mentioned after conference yesterday, that's why that trade was a little half-assed too, because I was at this conference, right? And by going to that conference, first I got a day pay, right? For my normal work. And then I was at a conference after my work, for my business, but for the work, right? So basically, yes, I lost $1,000, or I haven't sold it, but I lost $1,000 on that trade so far. But I made $1,000 going to that conference, right? More or less, right? So you know how it works, right? So that's also why I was a little bit, whatever, that trade probably works. I don't have time to monitor it because it's like whatever, you know what I mean? I make money at the conference, right? But anyway, at the conference, I talked to like a very veteran, basically an IT conference, a lot of programmers, right? A lot of designers and so on. So I talked to a lead programmer that I know then. He also, of course, a gamer, so he knows about the case, right? We discussed the case yesterday. And we both obviously kind of laughed at it. We were like, but if you don't write the code, no one can hear her voice. You know what I mean? He was very, very strongly, for that, right? That he's a lead programmer guy. He was like, yeah, like if I don't write the code right, no one's ever gonna hear the VA, right? That is just reality. If you don't write the code, no one can ever hear the VA speaks, right? So if she's gonna get 20% royalty, the lead programmer needs to get at least 21, you know what I mean? He needs to get more royalty, right? The lead programmer needs to get a higher royalty, whereas it makes no sense, right? That is how it is. Even without regardless of the hours, right? He's looking at the value that the programmer, especially the lead programmer, right? The CTO, the highest programmer guy, maybe you have several lead programmers, but get the point that the top programmers, right, at the game work, they are the most important individual, right? And then I would say it's the designer, right, the lead designer, creative guy, right, yeah. And sometimes, arguably, the designer might be more important than the programmer, because they gave basically the person that designs the whole vision, right? Like the whole game, the premise, this thing and that thing. Like, yes, they still need the programmer to actually make it work. So it is hard to say that you don't need the programmer. The programmer basically is always going to be the most important person, because they actually make it work, right? But without someone doing the actual general design, right, you don't know what to do. So it's kind of like who's the first thing there. But otherwise, seriously though, the artist, they're very important, especially for Bayonetta, right? But they're not as important as the designer, right? Because the artist, they need the designer to tell them what to do, right? In a sense. I mean, I'm being very, very simple here, but they need to have instruction to what are we making, right? What is the game, right? What is fun, right? And they also need the coder to actually make the game work for them and so on, right? So if I had to pick, right, if I only can hire 2 people, right, I would obviously hire a coder and a designer. Because those 2 guys can then make some art and paint or whatever. That is more important, right? If I hire like an artist and a coder, they are not really gonna make a game because they don't know what makes the game fun or whatever. Obviously, this is extremely simplistic here. But I get my point. The voice actor is the last person, right, in this formula. As I said earlier, right? The voice actor comes last, right? So, from a value standpoint, the voice actor is the last person, right? So the coder has to get more than 10%. So obviously, what would that mean, right? Like, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna give the coder guys like 500% of the royalties? You know what I mean? It's impossible to make any money in that, right? And I understand people get angry when I say this, right? Because people are so anti-cooperation or evil money maker capitalist. But end of the day, right? If you make a video game, you need to make money on it, right? If you want to play good video games, you should pay for them, right? I've always been against pirating, and so as a kid, people would pirate games, and I was like, no, if I like a game, I buy the game, I buy the collector's edition, right? So on, I've always been that guy, I like steel books, so on, right? Here's the steel book, for example, for Residual, and so on, right? You can't pay royalties for 2 reasons, right? The first reason, basically, I comment back again on the risk thing, but also is that if she gets 20%, we would have to give everyone else like an insane percent, right? So here's Jay. Jay thinks she should get 0.1%, right? Which is 1 in 1,000. But even that is too much. Because, again, right, we would have to give the developer much more. She worked 1 week, right? So in comparison, the developer, both in importance and in workload, right? The developer, especially the developer, should still have like at least 10 times her, right? The developer should have like probably 100 times her value, right? You know what I mean? So again, if she's gonna get 0.1%, every other person at least needs to get the same percent, right? So if you have like 300 employees working on this game for 2 years, right? That's 20%, you know what I mean? That's why you can't give royalties, because it's like immediately, basically, people, let's say in this site with royalties, they have no understanding of how economy works, right? Or how many people work on the game or something like that, because it's like, okay, but even if she gets royalties, it would mean, right, that like, the developers would need to get at least 1% or whatever. I mean, eventually you get down to so low value that it's like she can get like 1 in a million, you know what I mean? A ppm, yeah. She can get like ppm, yeah, 6 zeros, right? So something like that. So that doesn't make any sense. You can't give the developers royalties or the VA because they will get so incredibly low, right? If she, I always think it goes back to this person to say, right, how much royalty she should get, right? But it always comes back to, as I keep saying, but then the developers has to get more royalties, and it's gonna be like she will get nothing anyway. Yeah, it's just insane. So this person doesn't understand economy. I mean, honestly, the people don't understand economy. If she's gonna get a few cents per copy, so this is perpetuity, right? If it's in Shark Tank, this is like Mr. Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful. I love Shark Tank. I obviously like economy, okay? I love stocks, okay? Even if I'm down $1,000 a day on that game, not game company, I mean, first on that energy stock, whatever, I am, still happy because I'm only down like 7% in total this year, because I have a lot of, money in big companies. So I'm not devastated by it, That's what I mean, because I'm not devastated because I understand that the stock market goes up and down, and most of my money is Indian funds, so I'm thinking like, eventually I'm gonna go up, right? You have to just believe in it. But this perpetuity pay, right? So very Mr. Wonderful. And if she gets like 5 cents per game, and the game says like a million, right? You know, I mean, I understand how insane salary that is for a week's work. That's like saying she should get like $1 million for working 1 week. You know what I mean? It's so insane. But again, as I mentioned in my first part, it comes back to no risk, no royalty. You take no risk for 1 week's work, right? If you look at Mr. Wonderful then, at Shark Tank, because he loves to talk about a cent per game there, the risk he takes, right, is that he's like, oh, you have invented a new toaster. I like this toaster, so I will give you a deal. I will give you $1 million, right, for no percentage of your company, but I want 5% per toaster, you know, in forever, right, the perpetuity. And you must say, oh, he's a rich guy, yeah, but he takes a risk, right? He gives them, right? He loans them basically, right? $1 million, right? That is a risk. That's a lot of money. He gives the company, right? And if that company fails, he gets no money back, right? But if the company succeeds, he's gonna get a few cents, you know, per toaster sold, which will give him, you know, money forever, right? So it really depends on, of course, the margin they have on that product. Because if they have a great margin, he can take even up $1, right? So that's a more thing. But still, my point is that he takes a massive risk, right? There is no risk going and working there for 1 week. So I come back to that main thing. But also, like, again, if she's gonna get like 5 cents, right? A few cents, like 5 cents to Hellena Taylor, then the dev should get like $1, you know what I mean? And then the dev, the code lead programmer should have like $1 per copy then, which obviously would mean that, you know, the game wouldn't make any money. I made a tweet about this last week, or this week. And basically my point was that, sure, I think that, again, everyone should have higher pay, right? Like, everyone in the industry should have higher hourly wage. That makes sense, okay? Much more. Double that shit. Absolutely, double shit. However, if you're gonna give everyone royalties, you would basically, like this thing, right? You would basically have to sell the games for, you know, a lot more money, right? Because royalties and cap percentage would mean that you have to raise the margin, right, for the game. So basically, if she's gonna get like 5 cents per game, and then the dev should get 10 cents, and this should have 15 cents on, we would have to sell the game, right, for like $1,000. Every video game would have to cost like 1,000 USD in the store, or if we're gonna give everyone, you know, a few cents per developer, right? Because it's like 300 people, you know what I mean? That's the issue, right? If everyone's gonna get like 5 cents each, and we have at least like 300-400 people involved, you know, and some should get more cents because they are more valuable. Someone gets 50 cents, right? Eventually, it's gonna be like $30-40 at least for the video game is purely in royalty. Probably more than that, so a lot more than that. So it's gonna be like, this video game now costs $560 because the first $500 are royalty fees, and then we have the video game, right? So no one's gonna be able to buy games anymore because they're gonna cost like a fortune, like a month's salary to pay one video game. And I don't know. This is a genuine thing, I believe. This is just math. We have a AAA company has so many developers and so many artists and so many producers and QA testers and all this shit, right? So they have like several hundred people involved, and if you then have to pay, you know, at least even 1 cent per person, it's like 300-400 cents, right? That has to be paid per, you know, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It's insane to believe this thing. And again, the VA, I'm sorry, but the VA deserves it the least because they work the least on the game, so they have the least importance. Unless, of course, if they are like Chris Pratt, right? I said earlier, if Chris Pratt is massively famous, of course, because he has amazing star power. I hate people compare her to Chris Pratt, right? Because Chris Pratt is mostly Mario, but Chris Pratt is incredibly famous, so that has a value. Then you're paying for his fame, right? But no one knows this person before she, you know, did this thing on Twitter, right? Like, there's no star power. Those people don't understand how it works, right? $4,000. This is not royalty. This is a pay. A lot of people don't understand the word even that royalty, because $4,000 is not a royalty. It's just a salary. It's just a flat rate. Royalty would be something you make, you know, percentage based, or, you know, in like per game sold you make this money. You know what I mean? So that doesn't make any sense. Anyway, guys, I hope you liked the video, right? But I hope I made my point pretty clear here. And, you know, I spend a lot of time, right, with stocks. I've been day trading. I've been day trading for like almost 10 years. I don't do it I mean, sometimes I do it a lot, right? But because I have worked with consulting for about 5 years or so in my life in total, right? During those consulting hours, it's easy to also have time to day trade, you know, because when you're consulting, it's actually like a voice actor, right? You have gig economy, right? Gig economy. So you might have like 4 months on this game, and then you have 2 months, so you wait for a new gig. Then you have 6 months on that game, you know what I mean? So then you have time to day trade, basically. That's what I do, right? During the day, the time. And Hellena Taylor could have day traded, right? 50 weeks. She only worked for 1 week, right? She could have day traded for every other day, right? You know what I mean? Like, for example. But I think it's very important to think about it, that there's a low risk, right? Being a VA. And I really mean it. People can be angry and say, oh, but it's terrible, they'll get a job. Yeah, but on the same time, you have so much free time, right? I'll show you one last thing here before I start the video. It's already fun in the end, right? I've been working on my own art, right? Towards the kind of art. That's another thing, right? If you have free time, right, you can get a new skill, right? You can learn a program. For example, I taught myself how to play the piano during the beginning of Corona. Right? I mean, I really could play piano, but I improved my piano skills, right? To speak, right? And so on. I went back to, make my own game music again, right? Because when I was younger, I used to make, again, ost, right, for video games a little bit. And then I went back to doing that much more, right, during Corona. So now, this year, the last few months, I've been working on doing like, hot badass waifu art, right? Because why not, right? You know what I mean? And if I were as a VA and I had 50 weeks, right? Because again, she would have made half a year's salary in 1 week, right? So let's say she had 30 or whatever, let's say half then. 26 weeks, 25 then, depending on the Christmas or whatever, yeah. 25 weeks basically, right? Of free time. Those 25 weeks, like 5 months, I could spend time doing this kind of painting, right? You know what I mean? That's how I look at it. I'm like, well, I could day trade for 5 months. I could do waifu art. I could do other stuff. I can write the book, you know what I mean? You have to think it like that too. Yes, they have a gig economy, but they don't have it in the hard risk because they take no risk, right? They don't get their whole salary is based on hourly, so it's union pays, so there's no risk of not getting paid, right? You know what I mean? Their actual money they get isn't depending on how the company sells, right? I mean, I usually, obviously, I haven't really said it, but it's so obvious, right? What if the company fails? What if the company goes bankrupt, right? So if you want royalties, you have to also basically agree on that if the game sells, nothing, right, you get no pay, right? You know what I mean? If she's gonna work on Bayonetta 3, right, and have this absurd, like, 20% royalty, as that tweet was, she will basically have to get 0 in salary, right? And then if the game doesn't sell anything, she gets 0, right, for her work. That's how that kind of insane royalty will work, right? That insane cut, right? So that doesn't make any sense, right? You have to take a massive risk, as I said, early companies. But anyway, if you have a lot of free time, like Shipit has, right? Or people in that business, right? You can do other stuff, get some other skill, right? I always say to people all the time, I can play several instruments, right? I can do all this stuff, right? I can go and exercise, whatever, right? Yeah, go to the gym or whatever, right? Do something else with time, right? You know what I mean? Like, I would love to have the pay that, for example, Hellena Taylor has, right? Because she can basically work 2 weeks a year, and then she has a full year salary, which means that she has almost, 15, 49, whatever weeks then, right? To herself. Of course, I do agree that in reality, right, she would have to spend a lot of those weeks, of course, getting her next gig. That is, of course, true. The truth is, of course, that maybe she can get, let's say, 4 gigs a year, right? With her fame, say that, right? She would have to spend the other weeks in between that to get those gigs. And that's kind of part of the salary, right? Or the cut of losing money, right? That's very, very true. But, however, again, though, she is incredibly overpaid, right? For her 1 week, right? So she only needs like 2 gigs per year, right? To have like a game developer salary. You have to think about too that all developers are in Japan, and as I very well know myself, me and my brother, right, we work with game development mostly in Japan, right? Especially he then moved to Japan this year and so on. And it's before that he didn't, but now he also works for that in Japan, and it's just like the salary, unfortunately, in Japan is a joke, right? So she makes like, in a week she would make like, a game developer in the USA is like half a year for them, right? But in Japan, that's like 9 months or whatever. You know what I mean? It's even worse if you compare her salary to a Japanese developer, right? Unfortunately, as I said myself, I know very well, because Japan has bad salary, and even worse now than when the dollar has the yen is very weak now too. Then, so the USD is much higher too, right? So getting paid in yen now is even worse. So it's if you care about that thing too, right? Talking about stock here, right? Yeah, the index of yen versus dollar is terrible now too. So she would make even more because I don't know percentage right, but the dollar is like what 20% up or something this year. Which the yen is very weak. The dollar is very high right now. So there actually would be a massive difference, right? So the developers probably, she could almost make like a year's salary in a week compared to like a Japanese test, something probably, because the testers get even less pay, right? So a QA on Bayonetta 3 would probably make the whole salary, in 1 week, like literally. Right? And what's the risk, right? 1 week's work? No, it's a risk in that. So, anyways, long video, guys. But I could break down stocks or whatever too, right? I've been thinking of that stock channel, no, but I think it's more, on this channel here, right, I talk about this stuff and philosophy and psychology, right? And I made videos last year thinking about how people think and so on. And for me, it's always just like, but you have to understand that to make royalties, you have to take a risk, you have to take a chance, right? Like I said, I am currently down $1,000 in one buy from yesterday, right? Which is very terrible because $1,000 isn't I'm not a rich guy, right? I made it yesterday, but no, but I'm not a rich person. Not at all, but I'm probably, it's like for me, as look at middle class, right? I'm probably comparably richer to someone that doesn't have any money, right? It's not like I'm sad losing that money, but at the same time, I like that company. So that it's a flip trade, but it's a little bit, I like the companies. I'm willing to hold the money, right? At least, as I said, to the ER in 2 weeks, right? So you have to think about stuff like that, right? But again, my mentality is risk, right? Because as I mentioned, they might have a terrible ER, and then I lose even more money, right? Then I'm willing to take that risk, right? It's all about that. And what I've learned doing this stuff for 15, 20 years now, I've been in the market for 20 years, right? What I have learned is that the important thing to stay, mentally sane, right? If it comes to stocks, investment, is to believe in yourself and stand by your conviction, right? I don't mean hold the line. What I mean is that if I say to myself, I am gonna buy this stock, right? Put a lot of money into it, and because I believe that the ER is gonna be good, right? If that fails, of course I'm gonna be sad and upset and be like, oh shit, the amount salary or whatever, right? However, that's more important to stay by it and say, this is what I am betting on, right? And if that fails, it fails, but you at least took a chance, right? Because for me, what I have learned over the years is that I have more emotional pain, right? Where I really want to buy a stock before the yours, say that, and then I chicken out, right? You know what I mean? And then it goes up, right? That pain of missing out is worse, to me at least, than the pain of going down. Took a chance, right? So I'd rather play, risky, right? I take a risk, I take a gamble, arguably that. I take a chance, right? I play again, no risk, no reward, right? And by taking the risk and the reward play, because I'm pretty good at this stuff, I usually go up, right? So I buy a lot of ER trades, flip trades, or what, and like I said, 8 out of 10 times I win, right? So obviously I make money doing that, and it's this I keep doing it, I kind of, you miss sometimes, but it's all about being believing in that. That being said, though, I'm a very, very good guy at math, right? That's kind of from a development standpoint, right? I'm very, very good with the economy, right? So I've done game monetization, right? I'm very good with spreadsheets and AI coding and so on, etc. But especially also when game economy. So don't just do that me and say I'm gonna buy. Don't think I just buy 10 stocks and it's like 8 works, right? I do a lot of stuff. I do scripts. I do these Excel sheets. I look at the ratio and the P ratio. Obviously, I spend a lot of time doing this. Okay, don't get me wrong. I spend like 10 plus hours a week, right, looking at the stock market, a few hours every day, probably 2 hours per day, every day for years, right? So it's not like a little hobby, it's like a big hobby, you know what I mean? It's a big hobby, right? But that being said, for me, it's all about the mentality of I take a chance, and again, I have learned over the years that I hate myself more when I don't take a chance, when I'm a cowboy, right? When I chicken out. And because I like the company I bought yesterday, I am willing to take the ER chance, right? And honestly, even if the ER fails, I might still hold because I actually really like that company. And I think that the market right now is very, very bad, right? On a macro level, right? So I might even hold past that. But it depends, of course, on the actual earnings, right? It depends. If the earnings are terrible, you have to sell. And that's my last point I say then about the market here, because you also have to be willing to turn into a stock video now. But honestly, just because you love something, a company, but you have the ER, right? And I never done a mistake, okay? I never done a mistake in my whole life. Do you have an ER, right? So you get all the numbers, right? All the data. If that data is oh my god, it's going shit here, you have to sell. Don't be like, but I like this company. No, because if the ER is bad, it's bad. Sell, because all the people will sell too, right? You know what I mean? It is correct call to sell something, even if you're down, because if you're down and then the ER is even worse, right? Then you know that, oh shit, like Snap today, okay? Snap today is down massively. Might be the reason why I'm down too, because Snap is putting on the market. Where is Snap? There it is. 30%, right? Snap is down 10%. So if you hold Snap yesterday, you probably, this is only for entertainment purposes, right? But you should probably go up, because it's like, that shit was terrible. Snap has been having a bad ER for like the last 3 or 4 years in a row. Snap is like shit. Snap is shitting itself every time, every chance it gets, okay? I mean, I honestly, I questioned anyone's sanity for holding Snap over this ER, right? Because that's a massive gamble lose, right? It's a horrible gamble if you have Snap yesterday. But today, now you have the facts that it's even shittier than they believe it's gonna be, you know? It's time to probably, I'm not giving advice, I'm just saying that you should maybe look at the data and like, get it fuck out, right? You get my point. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, guys, and if you wanna see more stock stuff, maybe I will do that, right? Because I just like talking about stocks. I like capitalism. That's why I defend the big evil corporations. Because I'm like, Nintendo, big company good. I do have Nintendo stocks though, to be honest. Of course I have, and Sony and so on, of course I do. But anyway, so you guys have a great